The Chimeratech series. When a German scientist, the inventor of the Cyber Dragons and the Cyber Dark Dragons, was seeking inspiration for a new breed of machine, in his frustration, he made a critical error, causing a catastrophic explosion. Many of his machines were destroyed, their parts scattered across the laboratory floor. As the scientist regained consciousness, he gazed upon the overlapping parts from each of his creations. This gave him an idea. He would combine his pure light Cyber Dragons with the pure dark Cyber Dark Dragons. A chimera, if you will, of the two. Their power was immense. However, mixing of the light and the dark would be very volatile, as when these creations would be birthed, they would arrive in an explosion, wiping out everything in the vicinity. The scientist would eventually upgrade his two original Chimeratechs into two more devastating forms. And although the potential attacking power was weakened as a result of preventing the self-destruction, due to this, their destructive power had become more focused, instead targeting the enemy. The scientist would dub these machines the Chimeratech series. First released in the 2006 pack, Power of the Duelist, this series of cards is all about overwhelming destruction as a last resort in a duel. This was because to use these monsters, you must dispose of many of your machine monsters.
Meet the last monster you'll ever see! Rise, Chimeratech Overdragon!
This cost comes in the form of depleting your hand or field's resources. However, thanks to the fusion spell Overload Fusion, whose effect allows you to fusion summon one Dark Machine fusion monster from the extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from the field or graveyard. Due to the implementation of this card, this would significantly boost the power ceiling of the Chimeratech monsters. And with additional cards like Cybernetic Fusion Support, which at the cost of half your life points would also allow you to use your hand, field, or graveyard as fusion materials, the power ceiling increases even further. The name of Chimeratech is a mashup of chimera and technology. A chimera is essentially an organism that is composed of the cells from more than one genetic material. A famous example of a mythological creature that was a chimera is the aptly named Chimera from Greek mythology, that consisted of a lion's body with the head of a goat protruding from its back and the tail that ended in a snake's head. You can see allusions to this in many of the Chimeratech monsters, as all of them either feature many Cyber Dragon heads or have compartments that house separate Cyber Dragons inside of them. The amount of heads or compartments these Chimeratech monsters have alludes to the number of materials used for their fusion summon. So far, 4 Chimeratech models exist. The first being Chimeratech Overdragon. Requires Cyber Dragon plus 1 or more machine monsters. Must be fusion summoned. If this card is fusion summoned, send all of the cards you control to the graveyard. The original attack and defense of this card becomes equal to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon times 800. This card can attack your opponent's monsters a number of times each battle phase, up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon. The first of the Chimeratech monsters to be revealed, both in the anime and in the real world. This monster was owned by Zane Truesdale, and was summoned in his desperation when he refused to lose anymore. It represents absolute power and the rejection of respecting your opponents in a duel. Every material that Zane used for this monster's summon in the duel became a new head for the monster, and of course, iconically, for each head it had, it gained a new attack, which in the context of the duel allowed Zane to deal over 10,000 damage in a single battle phase. This monster would change from its anime debut to the real world, as while this monster would still force the summoner to send every other card they had on the field to the graveyard to get this monster out, in the anime, Overdragon can attack directly multiple times. In its real world effect, it is only capable of attacking monsters multiple times. However, this would be resolved in its upgraded form, its version 2.0 if you will. Chimeratech Rampage Dragon requires 2 or more Cyber Dragon monsters. A fusion summon of this card can only be done with the above fusion materials. When this card is fusion summoned, you can target spells or traps on the field up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon, destroy them. Once per turn, you can send up to 2 light machine monsters from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, for each monster sent to the grave, this card gains 1 additional attack during each battle phase this turn. Released in the 2016 pack, Breakers of Shadow, this monster is an improvement over Overdragon, as now instead of destroying the user's field, it instead focuses that destruction upon the opponent's spells and traps instead. For every material you use for its summon, you can destroy a spell or trap as a result. And not only that, the restriction of only being allowed to attack monsters multiple times is nullified, as Rampage can also attack directly more than once if you send monsters from your deck to the grave. Like all things, some limitations would now take place. The cost to have all of these new benefits was that its attack points are now set to 2,100, and its multiple attacks is lessened to a maximum of 3.
That's it. 3.
However, this could be subverted with cards like Power Bond or Limiter Removal, which would double its attack and make it easily capable of performing an OTK. Or perhaps with a card like Evolution Result Burst, whose effect allowed you to add a Overload Fusion from your deck to your hand, and then the monster summoned with that Overload Fusion, if it had 6 or more materials used for its summon, it would now gain an additional attack for every material that was used for its summon. And if we look at this monster's design, we can actually see its Chimera influences, as it has the heads of a regular Cyber Dragon, a Cyber Dragon Zwei, and a Cyber Dragon Dry, showing it truly is an amalgamation of 3 separate monsters. The next Chimeratech we have is Chimeratech Fortress Dragon. Requires Cyber Dragon plus 1 or more machine monsters. Cannot be used as fusion material. Must first be special summoned from your extra deck by sending the above cards from either field to the graveyard. You do not use polymerization. The original attack of this card becomes 1,000 times the number of fusion materials used for its summon. First released in 2010's Collectible Tin Wave 1, this monster was summoned for the first time in the anime when Zane was dueling against a Yubel-possessed Jesse Anderson. However, in the anime, this monster's effect and summoning requirements are very different. Originally, it could be summoned like any other fusion monster, be that with polymerization or even with overload fusion. And when it was summoned, just like Overdragon, it would send all of the cards that you control to the graveyard. However, that's not all. In the anime, every time this monster would attack, damage calculation would not be applied, meaning this monster wouldn't be destroyed by battle and you'd take no damage. However, instead, every time you attacked, this monster would inflict 400 damage to your opponent. And since you could use any number of machines as materials, you would gain an additional attack for every one used. In the context of the episode, Zane used 5 monsters and so attacked 5 times, inflicting a total of 2,000 damage. It's a shame this monster received such a drastic change because the original idea behind the Chimeratech series was that they possessed overwhelming power at the cost of tons of resources. Plus, their volatile summon that would send everything you had on the field to the grave made them quite balanced. Perhaps this monster's damaging effect was changed as they believed it might have been too strong for the time, since back then, cards like Future Fusion combined with Overload Fusion could make a really devastating combo. But that's not my biggest problem with this monster. My biggest problem with this monster can be summed up best with this.
Trying to rid the world of weapons? You gave it its best one ever. And now, I'm gonna kill you with it.
Yes, the change for summoning Chimeratech Fortress Dragon not with a fusion card, but instead just by having the materials on the field, actually made it into one of the Cyber Dragon archetype's greatest enemies. And now, for as long as Chimeratech Fortress Dragon exists in the card game, it will always mean that the Cyber Dragons can never achieve top-tier deck status. On paper, the ability to use your opponent's machine-type monsters sounds like an awesome idea. However, in reality, since you don't actually need to own the Cyber Dragon to summon this monster, this means the opponent can just side this card into their deck when they see that they're playing against your Cyber Dragon deck And then as soon as you have one Cyber Dragon on the field with any other machine type monster, they can just take your entire field. However, Konami wouldn't stop there. Fortress Dragon 2 would get a version 2.0, this time in the form of Chimeratech Mega Fleet Dragon. Requires one Cyber Dragon monster, plus one or more monsters in the extra monster zone. Cannot be used as fusion material. Must first be special summoned from the extra deck by sending the above cards from either field to the graveyard. You do not use polymerization. The original attack of this card becomes 1200 times the number of fusion materials used for its special summon. First released in the 2018 Legendary Dragons deck box. Just like Fortress Dragon, Mega Fleet can use monsters from both sides of the field and doesn't require polymerization to be summoned. In this monster's case, it uses any monsters in the extra monster zone. This gives it an attack limit of 3,600. And since the opponent's monster doesn't need to be a machine monster for this card to use its effect, it's a great way to get rid of problematic monsters. However, just like Fortress, if your opponent has this in their side deck, they can simply fuse your Cyber Dragon with your monster in the extra monster zone to yet again take all of your hard work for themselves. And you thought all you had to worry about was system down. Oh dear. Finally, I might as well mention two quite cool cards you can use with Chimeratech monsters. The first is DNA Surgery, which turns all your opponent's monsters into machines, which means you can use your opponent's monsters for Chimeratech Fortress Dragon, and also a more modern card, Rebirth Judgment, which turns every card in the graveyard into machines. You can use that as well with Overload Fusion to use even more materials if you want to. And with that, that was the Chimeratech series done. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for watching.